say we don't do anything today in U.S. 40% of the dollar has been printed, whatever, the last 2 years, right, that they keep talking about. Say we don't do nothing. How bad are things going to be, and how long would it last?
Well, does that include not to increase the money supply any further, which would be good? I mean, we should not increase it any further.
Zero. Nothing else. We vote on nothing. We say we're going through this. We're going to buckle down and go through this. How long will it last, and how ugly will it be?
It will depend on the strength of the community banks, the local banks, and they are quite strong in the U.S. So I think the U.S. will weather this because small firms will still receive backing from their community banks, whereas in more centralized economies where you also don't have these many small local banks, things would look much worse. I think that is actually a good policy at this stage. Of course, we should have done that already in 2020. They took the wrong policies. They created too much money for unproductive purposes. You know, all my work shows that that is wrong. You should only create money for productive purposes. And when I say create, means inject into the economy. The bailout I mentioned before doesn't inject new money, you see. That's why under specific circumstances, it can help you have a healthy banking system. But it should then also have the right incentives to lend for productive purposes.
So say they don't do anything. So I'm going to go back to my question. In 2020, you said they shouldn't have done it. They shouldn't have done lockdowns, because if you force me to a lockdown, then you have to pay me. So they should have not done the lockdown, so you don't have to give the money, because when you did the lockdown, you hurt the restaurants. But today, say we somehow, Democrats and Republicans, both agree on one thing. I don't want any more bailouts, okay? And we drive the hell out of this messaging. We want no more bailouts to these bigger companies. We don't do nothing. We're going to unite, and we're going to go through this time. And these bigger guys that have been spoiled for the longest time and they've not been working, let them go through the pain to see what we went through to come to the top. Because you don't know what it is to go through it, right? If we don't do nothing, how ugly will it be? How long will it last? And when I ask ugly, here's what I'm asking. Jimmy Carter era, you know the interest rates, where they hit, right? 16, 17, 18%. It's pretty ugly what happened during that time, right? And then Reagan came in and he did what he did.
Why did this happen? I studied the 70s, and most people think, oh, it was an external shock, a supply shock. Even like today, there was a war and then energy price shock. That's the reason. No, it's not true. Already over 1 year before, because oil prices only started to rise from late 1973. But I can already see in the data of the central banks and bank credit creation,
gold standard,
a massive expansion from 1971, 72, all of them. And that's what created that inflation. They then were looking desperately for a cover so that the focus is not on them. But they created this inflation. It was only sold and marketed to people as, oh, it's the oil price shock, it's energy, it's the Middle East, blah, blah. It's not true. It was the central banks. That is a fact. And you know, they should take responsibility for that. And unfortunately, they're doing the same thing again now. So, but the inflation is again created by
then the question then becomes,
the monetary policy.
So you say central banks, yes, okay, but say we didn't do any creative policies during that time. How long would have those high interest rates lasted, and how different would the economy have been?
You see, the high interest rates, what I showed with my earlier study, reconsidering monetary policy, is interest rates follow growth, and they follow nominal growth. So the money creation was revved up a lot in 1971. So 1.5, 2 years later, you get nominal GDP rising and huge inflation. And that's why interest rates had to go up. Interest rates always follow growth. That's what's happening now. It's all predictable.
So your concern is not interest rates. You're not worried about interest rates.
It will be painful for people clearly with mortgages that are, floating mortgages and so on. And that's something one should look at as policymakers. But in general, just looking at the macroeconomy and giving a quick answer, it's clear that what's happening now is the result of these bad decisions from 2020. We should stop making bad decisions. Doing nothing would be better. That would be a better policy than what they're likely to do, which is create even more money and accelerate the inflation, which could be very disastrous. So it is time to change policy, but also then to actually question this. Why do we have such a system where these wrong policies are taken? What can be done? And we should look at the strengths of the U.S. economy, and one of the great strengths is that there's thousands of small local banks. We need to help them and make sure that they won't be squeezed out because the big guys want to kill them. That's what's happening in Europe.
Of course.
But they are what's needed to make sure that your local small firm will survive. They need that supply because even a tiny local community bank will create money when it lends. That's like your own local money creation. It should be done for productive purposes, but giving it to a business small firm that is doing something productive, then it's fair and transparent.
How many meetings are being had right now, Tom, you think, with these big bank guys that funded the campaigns of different candidates that are saying, oh, okay, you don't want to do anything? Oh, okay, no problem. Yeah, don't do anything. See what we're going to do when it comes down to re-election time. How much you think the policymakers are afraid of not bailing out the bigger guys because the bigger guys have bottomed through campaign support and different kinds of things? Or do you think that does not play a role?
I think candidates are scared to death of big banks. I think both sides of the aisle are scared to death.
Yeah.
To Patrick's question, can you follow up one part that you haven't addressed yet? So he was saying, how bad could it be? How do we get out? How long will it last? Can you go to how long will it last? Because you've said how bad could it be? It could be reasonably bad on interest rates and the average guy with the mortgage. And then how do you get out? We need strong local community banks helping local businesses. That helps job creation, local growth, local economy, taking the pain off the people who just got hit with their credit card interest and their mortgage interest, right? Main Street, as we call it. How long do you think this will take? That was the third part of Pat's question. I'd love your take on that.
Yes. Well, if the scenario is that we are not increasing the money supply further for the big guys, and we don't have this inflationary policy anymore, then it's just going to be 1.5 years for the previous money creation to feed through and then stop. And then inflation will stop because inflation needs constant expansion in money creation. And you'd think, this is so obvious, that when you have inflation, they would actually stop the money creation. But the history shows, no, they keep going and they keep creating more money, sadly. But we're talking about the scenario where you do nothing and you don't increase the money supply. Well, then also the inflation would stop after 1.5 years.
Okay, so you're saying, this is just a clarification, that, okay, guys, it'll take about 1.5 years. Let your strong local banks support local economies. That $1.4 trillion was like food poisoning, and you got to get it through the body. You got to go throw up, you got to go to the bathroom, you got to get it through. But once it's through, largely all these things are going to return to nominal, and inflation on things, everything from milk to gasoline, which hurts the average person, is going to moderate. Is that what you're saying? And it's about
That's right.
1.5 years?
That's right. Yeah.
And historically speaking, Pat, what's very interesting, if you look back even the Great Recessions, not depressions, but Great Recessions have usually only been about 18 months. And so you're saying that the historical norms, that the peak impact of the recession, because remember, there's a lot that happens into it. But when we all admit, yeah, crap, it's a recession, 18 months. That's what you're saying.
18 months, yes, yeah.
Okay.
That is the lead time. That's also why in 2020, I was forecasting significant inflation to hit us 1.5 years later, which has been this year.
It also goes with the thought that says all recessions are 3 years. From the moment you know something's happening and you don't admit it politically, Pat, milk is going up, gas is going up, but you don't admit it. No, it'll be like Janet Yellen 1.5 years ago, just speaking to TV. Oh, yeah, maybe a month or so, 2 months. Yeah. So from that moment to when we really see growth again is a 36-month cycle. And what we really have in the United States is we have a year of denial by the political folks that are speaking to voters. So there's a year of denial, then there's 18 months of, oh my God, this is real. And then we have evidence of growth.
Yeah. And of course, the problem has been lack of accountability. If you take wrong
which is the year of, there is accountability at the voting booth, which is why you start with a year of denial.
But not by this, there's no accountability of the central planners. The ECB has been saying, oh, there's no inflation, it's transitory. They're all speaking the same, reading off the same script. Well, they need to be held accountable.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.